Hey guys, this is Jennifer Huff with The Joyful Table, and I'm here today to teach you how to make this really fun Hello Summer sign. So hopefully you picked up your kit this weekend and you should have everything that you need. You do have to add a couple of tools to get this project done. So you're going to need some kind of scraper card. This is an old gift card, but you can use a credit card or a plastic ID card, anything you have that we can just rub our stencils with. You'll need a pair of scissors. And you also need a glue gun, which I have plugged in behind me. So we're gonna go ahead and get started. If you have that going, if not, you can pause and go gather those little materials that you need. So you're gonna start with your little circle plywood, and we are gonna stain this. We are using this little brown one. It almost looks black, but it really is just a dark brown. And this is a water-based wood stain. And the reason we use the water-based is because number one, we're inside and we don't want all those stinky chemicals that we use with regular stain. But number two, it's pretty easy to wash off your hands. So you can wear a glove if you want to. I'm not gonna wear one this time just because I can quickly wash my hands and it comes off pretty easily, and I have no fancy nails on right now. So, all right, when I get started with this, the only thing you want to be careful of is pretty much where you're going to put the stain. It might leave like a kind of dark spot, so right, especially the first places that it touches. So what you want to make sure is that you're not overlapping areas too much, or that you don't just like make a divide down the middle and then re-stain it, because if those overlap, you're going to see that dark stain, and we don't want to see that dark in the middle. So being a circle, you can kind of see where the wood grain is. I'm going to kind of stick with that. But I'm going to work kind of quickly because I want to spread this out as much as I can and end up with not having any dark spots on here, okay? I like the wood grain to be showing, so I'm going to stretch this out pretty thin, but this is just preference. If you want to do it thicker, if you want to do it darker, you're more than welcome to. So I'm just going to kind of get started. I literally just jumped right in to the middle, and I'm trying to not, like I said, I'm trying to not like overlap my line. So I started in the middle, I worked my way out, I went and got some more stain. I'm just gonna work my way kind of in a circle around the edges. What's great about these boards is that the sides of the boards are already kind of look stained because they are kind of burned. These are actually cut on a laser machine, so a laser cuts these things into the perfect circles, because I definitely do not have that kind of skill. So it's great because the outside already looks finished. You don't have to stain it at all. So we are just getting this top surface. So I said I worked very quickly. This only took me like 30 seconds to really stain. And the reason being is I just didn't want any part of it to soak in for too long and leave that mark there. So I really like this way this one is working and showing up. I'm just going to keep moving all of this stain around. There was a little bit of a light area right here, so I'm going to go back and kind of dab that a little bit and rub that in. If you need to add a tiny bit more stain, you can. The other thing is we really want just that uniform look on here. And I love, like I said, I love to see the wood grain. Okay, so you can see how I've already got that all finished and stained. Now a couple of things. We really want this to dry. It'll really help with doing our stenciling. And we also don't want any texture on here because that will make our stenciling harder too. So as I'm doing this, a thinner layer is a lot better. So this is perfect. You can see there's no clumps of stain anywhere, and it's actually going to be close to dry pretty immediately. So I'm going to set that aside. I'm going to set my stain. I'm going to put a lid on it, because if I don't, I will most likely spill it again during this video, because that's just how I am. And you can see my little fingers, I'm kind of dirty. I'm going to go ahead and set my sponge aside, and I'm going to quickly wash my hands. So literally took like 5 seconds. Just getting a paper towel, and I'm going to rub that off. Sometimes if I have my nails done, then I will go ahead and wear gloves, but you know, during this whole crazy pandemic, it's a little bit harder to get gloves nowadays. All right, but I wanted to wash my hands really good too, because what we're gonna do now is we're actually gonna set that aside. I'm gonna push that over, and we're gonna work on doing the bow. So originally for the sample piece, this sign had just a little kind of dinky bow, because that's really what the Pinterest picture showed, so I tried to copy that. But I ended up getting this bigger ribbon that's chunky and fun. I got this for the other sign that we're making today too, but I had some extra, so I decided to throw this in with this summer kit as well. Since this is such a big bow that we're gonna make, we're gonna put it at the very top of our twine so that it's like kind of where you put your door hanger or your nail, wherever you're gonna hang it. Or you can use it for another project if you want to. So you can just use this as a quick little bow lesson for you. So I just need my scissors. I'm gonna need, I have this piece of twine in my kit. Some of this is gonna be used to hang it up on the door. So really I just need like kind of a section like that. So imagine this is gonna be glued to the back of the sign. So I need probably like a 6-inch loop around there. So pretty much I took my string and I'm gonna cut it in half. So I'll set half of this aside. This will be used for the back of the sign later. And the other half I'm gonna use in just a minute to cut and assemble a little bit of this ribbon. You may have this exact kind of ribbon, or you may actually have a wired burlap ribbon. It's the same size and same color. This one is not wired. I really like the wired better because you can make your bows look really pretty if they happen to get smushed or whatever like this one. But I'll stick with this one so you'll get the idea. So this is about 4.5 feet, and we want to get 4 loops, and then we're gonna add 2 tails, and we're gonna glue it all together. So I'm gonna show you how to do that. So I'm literally just gonna start in the middle, and I'm just gonna make one little loop like that, okay? It's about, I would say like a kind of a 4-inch loop. And what's great about this part is that nothing is put together, so you can undo anything you need to do. So literally I just folded that over. I've got my fingers pinching the middle, and then I'm gonna go to the other end and I'm gonna fold it back over. So now I should have like a little double loop like that. So we want to just make sure they're kind of matching as best as possible. And I'm gonna do that one more time on both sides. So I'm doing my little figure 8 again, except for this time I'm gonna make my bow loops a tiny bit smaller. So you can see I made that a tiny bit smaller, so it kind of like has the big one in the back and then the smaller one on the front. And then I'm gonna match that again on the other end. So I kind of looking at it, stepping back, trying to get them to be as even as I can. And that should leave you with like a good, you know, this is probably 18 inches tail that's on here, maybe a little closer to 12 on here. And then I have my 4 little loops. So I'm gonna take my 4 little loops. Now I'm gonna trim off all this extra. Let's kind of set that right here for now. So you can see how I ended like right here. So here's the midpoint, but I ended a tiny bit off of that. And the reason being is I'm gonna tie all these together. So I wanna make sure I have a little bit of overlap so that I can tie my twine. So I'm gonna take my little short piece of twine, and I'm still pinching this whole time. So I might just set it down on the table and make sure my twine is right in the middle of those. And I'm just gonna tie a tight knot, okay? So you can see I just tied a knot, kind of squished my stuff together. So now I'm gonna go back and I'm gonna kind of loosen these a little bit just to make them look a little bit fluffier how I want, okay? So I kind of loosen those bows just a little bit. And then I also am gonna just trim off these little end pieces. You could also not tie the twine quite as tight as I did if you want to make it a little bit looser in the middle. All that's kind of preference, and you can kind of see how it's looking as you're putting it together and see if you like it. But so I've got that so far. So I've got my little loops on the front, got one tiny little piece of twine, and then I've got my little extra here. Now for my extra, I'm going to cut off like a 1-inch piece, okay? I'm gonna cut this 1-inch piece. I'm gonna use that to cover up this little twine that's on the front of my bow, but I'll do that in a minute with my hot glue. So I set that apart. I got my 1-inch piece, gonna set that aside, and then what's left, you're gonna cut that in half, okay? So I'm gonna cut that in half because now I'm gonna make my 2 little tails, okay? To make my tails, I fold it in half, and then I cut from the bottom of the fold, and I'm gonna cut diagonal, okay? So you can see, so here's my folded edge, and here's my open edge, so I cut diagonally like that, whoop, and when you open it up, you have a cool little ribbon tail right there. So let's do that one more time. We've got my ribbon, I'm gonna fold it in half, So here's my folded edge. I'm gonna cut from the folded edge and I'm gonna go up at like a 45-degree angle. And then when you open it, you end up with that. If you mess up, if you do it backwards and it ends up being like a point, like a triangle, you can redo it. You have plenty of space. You can even flip this over and do this end because this part's gonna be underneath the bow, so it's okay if it overlaps a little bit. So now I kind of am gonna put these down here and this is gonna end up getting on top of it. Now, I think my tails for this particular sign are a little bit too long, and that's okay. Yours might not be because you may have made your loops a little bit bigger. So I'm actually gonna cut mine down. I cut mine down to probably about 4-inch little tails. All right, so let me grab my glue gun. Have my glue gun here. And what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna glue these two on top of each other. So that's just gonna be a tiny little dot to hold those together. I say that, but I lost my hot glue stick. You know, seeing how it's clear, it's not doing me any favors to make it easy to find. Okay, hold on. Y'all just know I cannot make this video in one leap because I'm just such a dork. Okay, so I can totally not find my glue stick. So if you want to give me 30 seconds, go get a cup of water or a drink, and I promise I'll be right back. Hold on. Okay, I promise. Man, I had told you I am such a dork. I have no brain cells left. Okay, so now we have our two little ribbons. Come on, now that I have hunted you down, you have to participate. Okay, so now, there we go. Okay, goodness gracious. Okay, so I got these two little tails. I'm gonna put them together however far apart or close together you want. Be careful because this is gonna pop right through that fabric. So I don't want you to burn your finger. And now I'm gonna glue this onto my tails, okay? And when I do that, I'm actually gonna glue the part that I put the little knot with the twine or the jute, I guess. That just kind of helps cover that a little bit. So I'm gonna stick that on there, kind of towards the top of those. Whoop. Straighten it just a little bit, there we go. And then the last piece we're gonna put on there is that little piece that we cut off at the beginning. And so you can get like a feel for how you want that to go on there. I kind of just wrapped it around literally just like that in the middle. So what we're trying to cover is just that seam. It actually kind of already started sticking because I had some wet glue in there. Add a tiny bit more all the way around. We're gonna cover that seam where that jute twine is. But that's just preference, how you want that to. So literally I just ran it right across the middle. Can't show you quite because my fingers are sticking to the bow, but you can see just like that. All right, so as that is drying, I'm gonna pull away some of that hot glue. Kind of hold that together there for just a second, and I can fluff up my bow just a bit, how I like it. All right, and if you have the wired ribbon, you'll be able to really kind of fluff your bows even better than I can. But I think for now, our little bow, little fancy cute bow is perfect. So I'm gonna go ahead and set this back over here. I'm gonna plug it back in because we're gonna glue that on here in a little bit towards the end. Okay, so now we should have given ourselves plenty of time for our sign to be dry enough to work with. The way that you can tell that the sign is dry is that it's not shiny at all. So I kind of hold it up to the light and I turn it and I say, okay, no shine. I also rub my hand on it and make sure there's nothing. If you feel any stickiness or any wetness on there, don't do this next step. You can blow it with a cold blow dryer, or you could just wait some time, like 5 or more minutes or so. You want this to be super dry. So now I'm gonna take my stencil, the one that has the popsicles on it, and I'm going to use my little card and I'm gonna scrape it. Hopefully this stencil cooperates with you. I've got some new vinyl, so it seems to be working very well. So the clear stuff that's on the top of this is called transfer tape. And the point of that is it's gonna transfer this white stencil onto my brown board, okay? So when I start to peel, I want this clear to pick up all of this white. Sometimes it's a little bit tricky to get the corner started. You're gonna really see that probably whenever we do the letter part. But for this step, I'm literally just peeling away and you can see the popsicles are kind of coming. Once you get started, I really love to go at an angle. Oh, I love it when it messes up because then I can show you. So look, I was peeling where that cute little bite mark is. Oh no, now it came off. Yeah, I was trying to show you. It was sticking behind. And so if you have any spot that doesn't come up, you're gonna want to make sure you go back and just gently lift. You might have to push your fingers on both sides. But what you want to end up with is this blank blue piece. That's trash. I'm going to set that aside. And then you're going to end up with your clear that has all your popsicles on it. Okay? Now I'm going to lay this on here. You should have a little bit of wiggle room, so don't push until you're ready to go. So as long as you're holding kind of the corners of the clear, you're going to have some wiggle room to get this stencil as straight as you can on here. So once I got it, okay, I've got an equal spacing all the way around my circle. I'm gonna push it down with my hands first, and then with my card. So I'm gonna scrape all over with this stencil. With the scraper, excuse me. Scrape all over this, and now I wanna get this clear off so I can paint it. So to get the clear off, I just grab the corner and I start peeling just parallel to the wood. Now, this stencil, like I said, should be good to go, so you shouldn't have any problems, but just pay attention that all of your white stays behind, okay? So now I've got, this clear is now trash, so I'm just gonna fold that up and set that aside, and I should have my stencil like this, good to go. You see I have a little border on the outside. Now, this part up here is all just extra. It's just covering the wood. So I'm actually going to do a little trick. You don't have to do this, but you might be better at coloring in the lines than I am. But I feel like I'm a little bit challenged. I'm too type B. I go through these things too quickly. So I'm actually going to peel up a little bit of this extra white that's up here. And I'm going to cut it off like that. So you see I kind of cut the top part off because I don't need that. That's just protecting this brown. And the reason I'm doing that is because I'm going to cut it and I'm going to put it down here. You see how this popsicle stick and this popsicle are super close to the edge that has brown showing still? I'm cutting this again into another little piece, and I'm going to cover some of that brown that's around this popsicle. See how I did that? You can see I'm covering that brown right here because I don't trust myself. So if you want to do it even more, I'm going to cut a little piece off of this and kind of scoot it around. So there you go. Perfect. So basically anywhere I color where this popsicle is, it's not going to get outside the border because I covered it with all these little scraps. Now, if they're going to get in your way, just trim them off. Okay, so all these little scraps, I'm going to push that down. All right, so now all my brown along this edge is covered. So even if I get outside the lines when I'm painting this one, it's not gonna make a mess. So that's kind of like my little trick for the day. I'm gonna do the same thing over here and cut into little pieces. So I kind of cut this little scrap into 3. And anywhere that I'm gonna get too close for comfort on that edge, I'm just going to use these little extra pieces to work my way around. I'm going to cover all of that edge. Okay, so again, I kind of covered all of that edge close to that popsicle, and I'm going to cut that off just so it doesn't get in my way. All right, so now I'm good to paint. Okay, again, you may just be like the perfect painter and you may be able to color in the lines perfectly, but I just think I don't trust myself. I'm too type B and I don't want to make a mess. So I'm trying to make it as easy as possible. You do not have to do that step. If you don't want to, I just like covering as much as I can because it is a little bit hard to get that paint off once you make a mess. So like I said, I'm just covering all this little stuff. All right, so I think I'm finally done messing with it. Okay, so lots of coverage over here. All right, let's get started with the popsicle stick. So you're gonna need your tan color paint. You need one of these tiny little stencils in your kit, sponges in your kit. Now, a big thing with this is we're doing a lot of colors and a lot of paint areas, so make sure you don't use a ton of paint. Make sure that you stay only within the area that you're trying to color. So where I'm gonna do that is I'm gonna dip my paint. Now, if your sponge looks like this, that is way too much paint, okay? You're gonna put it on there, it's gonna glob under your stencil, it's gonna go everywhere. So I wanna wipe it down, and I want to get just sponge texture. So I want to see those bubbles on the end of that sponge, that little porous texture on there. Once I've got that, I'm going to use kind of that flat edge of the sponge to start up at the top of the popsicle stick and just give it a little dab. I call this spouncing. I'm not really sure if I made that word up or where I heard that before, but I made it from sponges bouncing. So I call these little spouncers. So we get those. And we're just gonna go right up to the edge of the bottom of the popsicle. Pretend like there's a line there, there's not, but just pretend, because of course the top part we're gonna do with all the fun colors here in just a second. So there we go, I start at the top, do a tiny little wiggle to get it right up there where I want it, and then I just spounce the rest of my popsicle stick, okay? So again, I'm just gonna do that. If it's not perfect, or if you go over a little bit, it's okay. You can try again when you do your color. Because of course, when you do the color, you can cover up any of this tan that you might have accidentally gotten a little bit overzealous on. So there you go. I'm gonna just rub there and go down. Ta-da! And I got all my little areas for my popsicle sticks are covered. Okay, so now we're gonna go for colors. This part is fun, and I missed this part in person because on this step usually people get creative and they do their own color combinations or they do different things that they love, but of course I'm just going to show you what the sample piece looks like. If you want to get creative, please make yours the way you want it and then send it to me. I'd love to see a picture. So I'm going to show you the way the sample piece is. The colors go red, orange, yellow, green, blue, purple. So I'm just going to do that because that's what it looks like. But maybe you only want the blue, like you love the blue color, so you want to do all blue. Or if you want to use 2 colors and just do every other one, you are more than welcome to. This is your sign. You do it the way that you want. All right, so let me get started. So I'm going to start with my red. And again, same thing as the popsicle stick is that I want to dip it in, but then I'm going to wipe it right off. So I want to make sure I just have that sponge texture on there. Now, my paint is still wet on my popsicle stick, so I'm just going to be careful when I get started on this popsicle. I'm going to just go real slow right up until that edge of where I painted the popsicle stick. I don't have to be super careful on the outside because I used all that special extra vinyl to kind of cover my wood. But I don't want to get too close, of course, to this one because I don't want the wet paints to touch each other. So I'm just going to kind of go around and sponge my colors. All right, so I'm just going to sponge that red in there. And there we go. So I've got that red one done. You can see how I didn't get too close to the next popsicle. I want to leave space. So I'm going to leave this to the side, and especially if you think you might want to do 2 coats of colors, which is perfect and great, you're totally welcome to do that. If you want to do that, then you can just leave your sponge set out. It's not going to dry out for hours, so you're welcome to come back and do that, and I'll explain that a little bit in just a minute. But I'm going to go ahead and go to my orange. I just have to be careful when I'm right on the edge because that popsicle stick paint is still wet. So I go careful, and then I kind of dip again, and the rest of it I don't have to be very careful. My kids think that this orange one is so funny because I put a bite mark in that popsicle, so they think that's really cute. All right, so again, like I said, I'm too type B for this. I got a tiny bit into my next popsicle, no big deal, because I haven't even painted that one yet. So I'm just gonna use my finger, I'm gonna wipe that right off. So easy breezy. We can be flexible even if we get out of the lines just a little bit. So I took that orange off and we're good to go for the next color. So now we're gonna go to, let me set that aside. My goal is to not spill any of these paints anywhere. Okay, so my next one is yellow. That yellow has some hot glue on it. All right, we got that off. So we got the yellow, and go ahead and get close. All right. You know, it's funny, I was thinking maybe this sign should have said happy perpetual summer, because, you know, if you're in our area in Virginia, or really anywhere in our country right now, it just like with our schools being closed for so long, it's like the kids get this 5-month summer. And I know it's been tough, but there's also been a lot of benefit to it. It's been a lot of fun. My kids, they pretty much wake up every day and they ask, where are we gonna get wet today? Because I feel like that's kind of our thing, is that we go to a river. The closest river to us is like literally 4 minutes down the road. So that is awesome. I absolutely love that. You know, I'm a Texan, so my Texas girl, but I do really love the sights of Virginia, and I love the weather. It's nice. It definitely feels a little bit like Texas this week because it is hot, hot, hot. But I love that we can just go anywhere and jump in the water. My kids love going to the river or anything. Don't tell them you have a pool. They'll invite themselves over to your house. All right, so I got my green done. Set that aside. All right, onto this beautiful blue. All right, we've only got 2 more. All right, so we're gonna go on to this blue. Cut in right across that popsicle stick. Try not to touch the paint of the color next to you, since of course I just painted that, so I want it to dry, and I don't want to smear the 2 colors. If you do, it's not a big deal. You can try to wipe it off with a paper towel or with your finger. It's better to try to get it off when it's wet, but then you don't want to correct it until it's dry. So wipe it off as best as you can with your finger or with a sponge, but if you still have some residual like smear where you can see one color has gone over into the next color, excuse me, then just wait for that to dry and then go back, and when you put like another coat of whatever color is supposed to be there on the top, then you're not going to have that problem. It should cover up really well. All right, so last one. Get that bounced on there, kind of get my, I kind of go back a little bit and just make sure that every little spot of that popsicle is good and covered. I kind of see a little bit of bubbles that have popped on my blue one, and I could see some spots. I'm going to go back and touch that up a little bit. Same with my yellow. I kind of feel like the first 3, like the yellow, orange, and red, they just for some reason the color needs a tiny bit more. I think it's just not quite as bright against this dark wood background. So I'm going to go, and I didn't even dip my sponge into any more paint. I just used what was already on here, and I just went back and I bounced a little bit more color on the top of these. All right, now I need that to dry, because in order for me to do my next step, I need that to be pretty good and dry. So I'm going to go ahead and actually peel some of this vinyl off. You have some options here. So first, what I like to say is on this particular sign, what you see is what you get. So whatever darkness these colors are, however thick they are, this is what's going to look like in your final project. So you want to make sure you love the colors at this point before you peel anything off. So if you look and you're like, my yellow's not as bright as I would like it to be, or whatever, let this dry. So it should take like 5 minutes, and then just redo what we did. You can redo the popsicle sticks, you can redo all of the colors, whatever you want. So I think if you did 2 coats, you would get a very solid color. So you're more than welcome to do that. So you can just let that dry. For the sake of time, I'm not going to do that. My popsicle sticks are already dry, and I think I might have gone and done a second coat, but I don't mind it. So, but I'm going to peel off some of mine. You do not have to peel until it's dry. If you are going to peel before it's dry, then just make sure you are confident in your peeling. And I say that because really the worst thing that you could do is start to peel and then get scared and like drop your stencil, because then potentially some of that stencil that has paint on it would retouch on your wood, and of course we don't want that to happen. I'm starting by peeling off all these little like border pieces that I added on there, all those little extra protections, and I definitely got paint on all of them. So you can see that was covering up that extra brown wood. So if I hadn't put that on there, I would have gotten paint on my sign. But so I'm really glad that I did that little extra step. So now I'm gonna peel off mine. Even though it's a little bit wet, I think it kind of helps it to dry faster, and so helps it kind of dry those edges, and I need this to be dry for us to go on. But I'm gonna start peeling. When you peel this off, try to peel at a diagonal from the wood grain. So I can see my wood grain is kind of up and down on mine. So I'm gonna peel totally diagonal across my whole sign. And I'm just gonna peel slowly so that I don't tear up too much of the wood. If you accidentally peel up a little bit of wood, which you shouldn't, but it's possible, you know, if you had put the stencil down when the stain was still a little bit wet, sometimes it'll pick up some little splinters of wood, and this is just trash, but mine is covered in wet paint, so I'm gonna set that aside. If you accidentally peeled up a little bit of your wood, go back and you can just use your sponge that still has some brown on it. Don't dip it again because you want it to be very, very light, and you could use that to kind of touch up a little bit of those areas. All right, so you can see what mine looks like. I think it's looking awesome. I didn't do 2 coats on mine, but I did, well, I sort of did. I kind of did like 1.5 coats. Mine wasn't fully dry yet, but I went back and I touched up just a little bit. So that's why mine's not dry yet. Typically, mine would be ready for us to keep going, but it's not quite. Oh, that feels so good. Oh, it's very hot. And so I'm kind of just gonna shake mine and let it dry just a little bit. Oh, something I forgot to mention earlier, too, is that you also, of course, you have the back. So if something happens and you totally messed up your stain, or you just don't like the way that it looked, then of course you could have started on the back. I love these boards because they're nice and thick, so they don't bend, and this is birch wood, so I think it's really pretty. I love the wood grain. I like all of that. So we're just gonna wait a little bit longer for this. The other thing we can do at this point is, now that we have the popsicles on, we can kind of see where the very tippy top of my sign is. So what I do is I pinch it and I hold it like as if it was hanging on the door, and I can just see when it's straight. So I want to make it as straight as I can and make sure my finger is pinched right where I would call the top of my sign. Okay, so I'm just holding it up, looking at it, I hang it from my fingers. I say, okay, I think that's really the top. So I've got my fingers there, and then I'm just gonna take that little piece of twine that I had left over right here, and I'm actually gonna hot glue that on the back, just easy breezy, right where my finger is. I'm gonna do it so that whenever I hang it on this hook, or on my hook or whatever, on this twine, that it's gonna hang straight, okay? The only thing I'm gonna add about that is, let me grab my blue paper, and I can kind of fan this just a little bit while we wait for that step. Okay, the only thing I'm gonna say about that is, if you have, let's just say, a solid black door and the sun goes directly on your door all day, every day, the only trouble with hanging this on your door with hot glue is that the hot glue could melt. I personally have never had that happen, and I have a dark door, but I guess mine's a tiny bit covered, so just keep that in mind. If you have a super dark door, or if your door is in the direct sunlight all day, you might want to keep an eye on it and see how hot your sign gets. And the fix for that would just be, use a little bit of super glue to hold that string on instead of the hot glue. So you could do that easily. Or of course you could put like some kind of tape or some kind of something over the back of that to hold it in place. So let me grab my hot glue gun again. And I'm gonna grab my ribbon. I'm just gonna set it aside for now, being careful not to stick it in any paint containers. Okay, so now with my hot glue, I put my sign down, so of course now I have to find the middle again. So I'm gonna hold it up, find my middle. So where my middle is, I'm just gonna loop this and put just like a little bead of hot glue on the back and get this on here. So of course, don't stick your finger in the hot glue. I'm going to use my scissors to help me push it kind of into that bead of hot glue. And then, you know, it's going to loop. So I like skipped about an inch over the center of that. And I'm going to put another little kind of rectangle area worth of hot glue, kind of shove that twine into it. Use my scissors to kind of hold that in place. Pull off whatever excess I have so you can see. And then while it's still wet, I kind of held it up to see, okay, it's centered. So mine is good. So this is going to be just fine to hang mine up with a center spot right here. All right, now, even though we don't have our second stencil on there yet, our other stencil with our words on there yet, the hello goes up here and the summer goes on the popsicles. So of course we don't want the bow to go right here because it's going to cover up my words. So I kind of have two options at this point if I want to use this bow. One, I could put my bow here, okay, because that's going to have nothing on it. So I could go down here with my bow. Or depending on how you're hanging it, especially if you're hanging it on something like a nail or something like that, you could glue this at the top of your sign, which is what I'm going to do in this case. So since I'm also still waiting, of course, for mine to dry all the way, I'm just going to take mine and I'm going to pinch it like it was hanging up. So now I've got the very tippy top of my twine and I've got that flat against my countertop and trying the best I can to not get burned. So again, I'm just going to put a little bit of hot glue along the top of that loop. Okay. And then I'm going to take my bow and I've got the very back. I'm just going to put that right dead center right there. I'm going to kind of hold it on the countertop and let it dry. So since this is granite, of course I can do that. Be careful if you've got, you know, laminate or something like that. Of course you could do it on a surface or something. So I've got it on this granite and the granite is cold, so it's actually going to help that hot glue dry and it'll just pop up all together. So I'm going to peek. Oh, there you go. So mine just literally came right up when that hot glue is ready. And so you see I've got my little cute bow up there. So that's good. So now I'm going to rotate. And now it's time, I think, almost. All right, I'm still going to give this a couple more minutes. I need to follow my own advice to you. And my advice is if you start to work on this step and your paint is still wet, you're going to mess up your sign. So it's just not worth it. It's better for you just to wait. You can fan it off with your blue paper or with anything else, especially since I did those 2 coats, even though I lied. I said I wasn't going to do it, and then I went back and I painted a little bit more. So mine needs a few more minutes to dry. All right, so we're going to let that dry for just a second. We're going to work on our, you know what we can do is let's work on our stencil just a little bit. So now we have these letters that we're going to put over the top. I don't always apply vinyl directly to the sign and leave it, but in this case I'm going to because since it's like since it's a door hanger, I feel like the sign is right here and you see it all the time. I wanted perfect, sharp, crisp letters. So I'm going to take my my scraper and I'm going to rub all over this. And hopefully it gives me some trouble. And I say that because that way I can show you in case you have some trouble. So again, we're going to use this and we want to peel up all of this white. Okay, so my S came up pretty good. So you can see the S started to come up. But if you have a spot that's not coming up, I kind of just pinch both sides of the sign, so the front and the back, and that'll help to get that letter started. I feel like when you get the corner started on a letter, usually the rest of the letter will follow pretty easily. But it seems like with these little tiny skinny letters, I almost have to pinch on the beginning of every single letter. So that's why this was a good thing for us to work on while we wait. Okay, and then if you're still having a problem, you know, you can change directions. You can come from another direction. So like, okay, that M is giving me a hard time. So I'm just going to flip over. As long as I don't push this back together, anything I've already peeled should stay not peeled off. All right, so I get these letters. Ugh, giving me a hard time. Like I said, that's a good thing because then I can kind of show you. I'm going to go back and scrape just a little bit more on these three. The M, M, E are kind of giving me a little bit of a headache. So I'm going to kind of force them to, come on, peel off. Want to get those. You could also peel this way and get your little letters to stick down. So I've just got a couple that are being ornery at the moment, of course. I think because they know I'm doing this live video. All right, so holding all those little letters down, you can peel it backwards if you want to. But now all my letters should be coming up. All right, I hope you do not have as much trouble as I did. Mine was a little bit tricky. If I'll be totally honest, the reason it was a little bit tricky is because my children spilled some water on the counter and I didn't notice it. So my little transferred paper was a tiny bit wet. So I don't think you're going to have nearly as much issue as me, assuming you do not have 8 children that like to spill things on your counter. Okay, so I'm gonna stop touching my letters. The other thing about this sign, since we're actually applying the letters, is that if one of mine gets a little bit crooked or anything like that, I can actually just set that one letter. So that should be fine if I got one off. Oh, hallelujah. Okay, stop touching the letters. Okay, I got that off. And like I said, my E was a tiny bit. Okay, so now you should have your clear plastic and it should say, hello, summer. We're gonna put that on there. Oh, I can even do it this way. You can see it the right way. Hello, summer. All right, so I'm gonna set that aside. I'm putting it non-sticky side down. Let me go check on my sign again. I've literally got one little spot that's still holding on. It's just gonna try to stay as wet as it can. So I'm gonna encourage it to dry just a tiny bit by rubbing it. So I don't know about you, but we had a huge trip planned for this summer. We were going to Texas and everything, just all over the country. Our kids were so excited, we were so excited, but everything with the coronavirus has been so crazy. So we've had to cancel a lot of our trip and seeing friends and family, which has made me so sad. But we're gonna try to still get out, and we're thinking we'll rent a beach house or something like that so that we can kind of quarantine away from home. We don't do any of the extra activities and stuff like that at the beach. We just go to the beach. So we're hoping that we can still do that. So I hope that you and your family get some time together out of the area. I feel like we've been trapped inside forever. All right, so say that, and now I've got my sign. All right, so now when I go to put these letters down, what I'm gonna look at, so you can see on the sign that's finished, all of these letters are centered right on the popsicle stick, okay? And then you wanna make sure that they're straight along the line of the bottom of the popsicles, all right? We wanna make sure that's all as lined up as we can get it before we push this stencil down. As long as these are nice and straight, then your hello should be straight too. So I'm gonna go ahead and just try. It's kind of like with the other stencil, you have a little bit of a wiggle room. So until you really start pushing that stencil down, you can kind of wiggle these around a bit to where you like them. So I'm just looking to make sure that I've kind of got an equal distance from the stick for all the bottoms of my letters. So and then I wanna make sure they're kind of centered, especially on the M's, I feel like, because the M's, since being so straight, you can kind of get away with a little bit more whenever you have squiggly letters, but on those M's that are just 90-degree angles and stuff, it's a little bit, you have to be a little bit more precise. So I got it where I liked it. I have just a tiny bit of spacing. I'll show you in just a second. And then I'm gonna push down with my hand, just like we did with the other one, but now I'm gonna scrape it down because all of this vinyl is staying. This is outdoor grade vinyl. It should be fine outside. But that's why we wanted to take care of those letters and not stretch them out or anything, because we're keeping this vinyl on the sign. We're doing that for both signs today, putting some vinyl on here. And that just, like I said, I like it because it's a little bit easier, it's one less step, and it looks super crisp for something that's going to be on your front door or somewhere where people are going to really see it like up close. All right, so then I've got my clear and I want to get that clear off. So again, I'm just going to peel it right along the wood. So I'm just going to peel it away, and as I'm peeling it slowly, as long as your stuff was dry and everything was good, the white should stay, but just be careful. So I'm watching every letter as I peel. If any of those letters start to come off or have any issue, I'm right here ready to just hold that letter down in place. But I didn't have any issue. Everything went on there great. All these letters look perfect. Let me fold that up. And there we have it. Look at that. How cute is that? And you got a bonus bow on the top. Again, you could have done the bow down here if you want to. You can be creative, but I love how it just barely hits the top of the sign. And look, you are ready for summer, perfect for this 89-degree day. And I hope you enjoyed your project, and I hope you did it with some friends, and I can't wait to see you. I'm hoping that we can do a live party next month. So I love you guys, and thank you for joining us, and enjoy your project. Send me any questions or comments that you have. Especially if you do your sign differently than I taught, please send me a picture. I want to see it. I love to see all of the finished projects, and I love to see how creative you guys are. Again, this is Jennifer Huff from The Joyful Table, and thank you for joining us for our Pinterest party.